Barbecue restaurants love this font. And honestly, like, I have no idea who invented this. Like, it's someone, but it is like peak 2006, like grunge culture.
Yes.
Like, is like, just like, we needed to look edgy. And like, do you remember when websites were all about like the like spray paint aesthetic? And it was all just like, so like, you're like, yeah, this is tough.
Yup.
And you're just like, what?
It is not.
Yeah, it's something else. So
Your token creatives.
Yeah. Yeah. What?
all right, hello and welcome back to Your Token Creatives. I'm JD,
And I'm Julian.
and we are talking to you through digital communication services. Once again, the microphones are interpreting our sound, and you're listening to it. How cool is that, man? Modern technology. I don't plan any of our intros. I don't know if anybody listening thinks that I write them out and I'm reading from a script, but I never have anything to say before I start talking.
No, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Like, if you ever scripted out an intro, it'd be like, no, that's too weird.
Yeah, it'd be a little weird. You're like, hello, my name is JD, and welcome back. Yeah, we can just have AI do that, you know? You guys are coming for the organic, whatever the heck JD's going to say kind of moments, you know? That's why I'm assuming you're listening. But yeah, we're back. Another episode, another week down, and we are just burning through topics at this point. Last week, we had a fun conversation about desk upgrades. And yeah, it actually caused me to like put my one to the test. So, I mentioned the desk light being like an important thing. And as you can see, my desk over there, I put it back up because I had it down for a while. And it's funny, on the show, I mentioned those health benefits. I was like, oh yeah, it like reduces eye strain. It like really helps with blue light, like all this kind of stuff. And then I was like really convicted where I was like, so why aren't you using that? And I was like, yeah, okay, let's put it up and see if it makes a difference. So I was using it the past week and I was like, you know what? I would say it makes a moderate difference. Obviously, like, it's summer, so like there's a lot of daylight around. I feel like in the wintertime, like if you're working in the dark, a lot of the time it make a more drastic difference. But I will say it's helped a little bit.
Interesting. Okay. I will say I kind of had the same thought where I started looking at monitors
Yeah.
on my end.
Yeah.
to like expand on my workstation.
Yep.
And so no, that's I feel you. I feel you there.
Well, and so you also recently got a mechanical keyboard.
I did,
and that didn't make your list.
It did not make my list.
So where did that come from?
Yeah, that actually came from the macro shortcut keyboard, mechanical keyboard that I ended up getting. It was just like, oh, I love the clickiness.
Yep.
I need to get a mechanical keyboard.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Do you think, if we were to retroactively do the 3 again, would you put mechanical keyboard into your top 3 desk upgrades?
Oh, I don't know. It'd be super hard.
Okay.
It'd be a very hard decision.
Okay.
Trust me, already in like the couple days I've been using it, it's, like I get to write an email today.
Wait, are you writing your own emails again?
I'm starting to write my own emails.
No way.
Yeah.
You're not letting Notion write them all for you?
If it's if it's a short little response, I'll do it. If it's something heavier, I'll let Notion handle it.
Wow.
But yeah.
Mechanical keyboards got you to write your own emails again. That means something.
It really does. It really does.
Well, maybe if we revisit the desk upgrades in the future, maybe it sneaks back into the top 3.
It very well would easily make its way back up there.
That's amazing. But yeah, if you haven't listened to that, please go back and listen to that episode. We appreciate everybody who's listened to the show so far. And it's time to dig into another episode now. So, as we always do, we start off with some news in the world of design. I made a half-hearted promise to keep you guys all updated in the world of design, or at least give you interesting things going on in the design world. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is dubbed the most annoying website on the internet. And I don't know if this is like a new thing. I just found out about it recently, and so that's why it's news. But basically, these designers created probably the least functional website in the history of web design. And I was like, as far as design goes, it is so impressive how frustrating this website is to use. So, Julian, I had sent it to you. You messed around with it. Can you give like an overview of what's going on and your experience with the most frustrating website of all time?
It was easily the most frustrating situation I've ever been in,
Okay.
like digitally.
Yeah.
As soon as you like go click to the website, the instructions is super simple. It's just you just need to fill out a contact form
Yeah.
as accurately as possible, like within a certain time limit. And so you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just a form.
Yeah, I could do this.
No big deal.
So you click through to the next button, and the next button doesn't work.
Okay.
And then you start like looking around. You're like, wait, what?
Yep.
Why doesn't the next button shouldn't be there?
Yeah.
And it actually doesn't say next.
Nope.
It says back.
Yeah.
And then like there's next where the back button should be. Mm-hmm. So should I click that?
Yeah.
And you start, it takes you a little bit just to even get into the contact form.
Yep.
You get into the contact form, and that's where the hot mess begins.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that's all just the preface to get into the form. You're not even in the form yet.
You're not even in the form yet, and it's already like, wait, what am I doing?
Yep.
And, bro, the moment I clicked on to fill in my name, and it didn't like eliminate the highlight, or like it just didn't go to like the beginning of like the bar.
Yep.
And it was just like, wait, I'm typing in the middle of like where it says name.
Yep. Because in
Like-
every other form in history, the filler text that's there that says like first name, last name, it disappears when you click on it.
Disappeared.
Not here.
Did not disappear.
Nope.
Did
That's just real text. That just is real text, and you have to like cursor through to the beginning or delete all the filler text.
delete it all.
Yep.
And so then like it's like, okay, like let me put in your email.
Yep.
And then it's not just like here's the one bar for you to put in your email.
Yeah.
It splits it up of like here's the beginning portion before like the at symbol.
Yep.
What's the middle portion after the at symbol?
Yeah.
And then like what's the actual like ending of it? Is it .com? Is it
Yeah.
.edu?
Yeah.
And you have to fill it all out by hand.
Yep.
And when you get to, because each of them are their own individual bars, like text boxes. And then when you get to the
Which is
last
so
one,
dumb. Yep.
which is so infuriating. You get
Yeah.
to the last one, and then on average, it's .com is typically at the top.
Sure.
.com is not at the top.
Yeah, because it gives you a list of options. Like it's a drop down menu, so you can't even type in. It's the shortest part of your whole email address, and then make you do a drop down, and they hide .com at the very bottom.
The most commonly used one is the hardest one to get to.
Yeah, I know. The other ones are like it's like .info, .net, .org, .edu, .gov, and then like it's all the way down.
Everything else that you can imagine.
Yep.
I was like, oh, come on.
With the slowest scroll speed possible too.
The scroll speed was infuriating.
Yeah. So then the other thing is, did you use the help menu that's on the website?
I clicked through the help. I clicked through the help menu.
Yeah. So at that point, you're desperate. You're like, okay, let's click on this help box.
Yeah, see if there's like a little information that can come up to help
Yep.
me out here. And then it starts creeping up the page.
Yep.
It doesn't go anywhere. It just starts creeping up and taking up more of the page.
Yep.
And next thing you know, it's just like at the top. And you start looking at it and you're like, where the submit button should be.
Yep.
It's like, bring this box back down.
Yeah.
And so you start clicking it and it starts bringing this whole info box back down.
Yeah. So like the little thing that's normally the minimize is actually,
Yes.
it just scoots it up like 20 pixels and it just goes, like it just keeps going up your screen.
All
And
the
you're
way
like,
up.
wait, what is this? And there's a text box for the help, but there's no submit
Nope.
or connect. Like it's always a message thing. No, it's just a text box there for fun.
Yep.
So the help is just like a temporary distraction from the rest of the website. That's all it's helping you to do.
Now, this whole process, you're still being timed. And
That's the other thing, the anxiety that's happening during this form. Every minute it pops up with this like, hey, you're running out of time.
yep.
So it's like, you're like, what am I being timed on? Like, why am I being timed? Like,
Yep.
but it's impossible to ignore the clock at the top of the screen.
Or when that pop-up window comes up and you go to click the X to minimize it, it actually doesn't minimize it. It
Yes.
expands it to the full page. And so
Yes.
then you're trying to figure out how to minimize this actual window.
Because there's not a close button.
There's no close button.
It's not, yeah. It's hidden in the bottom left, and like where there's always like the copyright stuff
Yep.
on the website. That's where it is. So it's the copyright icon and then LOSE. So you like, if you're not paying attention, you're like, the company is like, and you're like, oh no, that says close. And that's the close button in like size 6 font too.
Yes.
It's so insane.
It is so infuriating that whoever made this site knows so well user experience to make it so cumbersome.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I think only designers will appreciate this because there's so many things about web design that people don't realize are like structures that are in place that you like have to do, where it's like there's, you got to have a close button, you got to have a next button. With forms, you have to structure it in this many bubbles or in this kind of a stack form or all this kind of stuff. And it's like, technically you don't have to follow those rules, but when you're creating a website, like all of those little things that make it that much more annoying can lead people away from your website, which in a business scenario can lead people away from sales. And like, it can lead you away from money. Like it can literally like have dire consequences on your business. So then this person's literally like, I'm going to create a website that is the most annoying things that you can possibly imagine in a website. And it's just literally the opposite of counterintuitive. It's just like every button's out of place. And you realize like we have used websites for so long, we come to expect certain things are in a certain place, even if we've never used a website before. And it's literally just like, too bad. They're all in the wrong place. They're all the wrong text. Like every button is not clickable. Only the text is clickable. Sometimes you never know. And there's a timer that just keeps it, just gives you anxiety for absolutely no reason at all.
It's the worst. Honestly, there's like a portion where like as in like user interface, it's telling you like, as you progress through these forms, you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever step you're on. And the first second, it was like 1, and then I saw it switch over to 2, like at the second. And the amount of anxiety that I experienced in like literally 2 seconds. Because it was like, oh no, like what just happened?
You're like,
what
why
did I
change?
do? Exactly.
I didn't click anything.
It is so perfectly done to infuriate anybody.
So if you're trying to use it yourself, it's userinyourface.com. So it's userinyourface.com, and you should definitely go check it out. How deep did you get into the form? Did you end up submitting a form?
So I got past like the first one, like the first like contact form. Before it got me to like the next stage. And once I got to the next stage, I was so like annoyed at like how long it took me just to get there. That I was like, I got other things I got to do.
Yeah, bro. It's so frustrating. And honestly, I probably spent a good 10 minutes on it and I wasn't able to get past the first screen. Like I was able to figure out how to close windows, dismiss cookies, but it's so frustrating. Honestly, I'll give $5 to anybody who can get to the end of the site because it honestly feels like a video game, like with how challenging it is, but a video game with absolutely no rules, and that's impossible to solve. So if there's an end to the website or the game, then I would be happy to. I'll Venmo anybody $5 who can actually beat this website because it feels like a challenge.
Show us like video evidence where it didn't happen.
Yes, you need to screen record it. I don't believe anybody who says they actually submitted a form. Like I need a big green check mark, or knowing them, it'd probably be like a red X. It's like you submitted it successfully, red X mark.
That was the other thing too. Like the language that they would use for like something successful was not the correct language. So, okay, actually, right before I made it to like the next one before I quit, it was like, you need to make a password. And so I made a password, and in bright red letters at the bottom, it was just like, this password works.
So instead of like incorrect password or doesn't match our requirements, it said it worked in red text.
It worked, and I was just like, wait, why doesn't? It does work. Like,
it was. Thank you.
It was wild. It was like, okay, this is.
It breaks every color theory rule. It's like
everything.
The copy is just horrible. It's so funny. So please go click around on the website. It's so much fun, but it's also so infuriating. So. Like, definitely have a stress ball, or like, don't spend too much time on it, honestly. Like, you will go down a spiral. But yeah, I just had to point that out. It's literally the worst designed website ever, and I think that's amazing to do. It's really hard to do. I thought the worst designed form menu in the world was the ones that they use, like, on video game consoles when you have to like type in your login info. Like in my mind, that's the worst way to fill out a form, where you have to like, you're like scrolling like click, 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 A, click, 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 T. Like in my mind, the PS4 like type in menu is the worst of all time. But this website takes the cake for the actual worst form in the app, in the world, in the internet.
Oh yeah.
For the history of time.
Hands down. Makes you appreciate any type of challenging form you have to fill out now.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, next time you have to fill out like a thing, prompt questionnaire, and you're just like, name, email, message. It's like, wow, what a relief. And the submit button actually submits it. Like, this is amazing.
It's like, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah, forms feel fun again in comparison. Makes you appreciative of what you do have,
For real.
So, yeah, userinterface.com, hilarious website. Just had to point that out. And in more design news, this one is actually extremely productive.
Yeah.
And kind of just a crazy evolution of AI technology we knew was coming. And Adobe released their AI generative fill feature. So this is one of the first visual products in a major company's software that I've seen integrated. And it's kind of nuts that it literally just came out as like a Photoshop update. But those of you who don't know the generative fill feature, this is essentially what it is it's a new, here, I'm going to read the press. So this is scripted. So sorry for what we talked about earlier, but you'd rather me explain it this way and we'll talk about it. But it is a new AI-powered tool that allows users to add, extend, and remove content from images non-destructively using simple text prompts to achieve realistic results that will surprise, delight, and astound you. Generative Fill is powered by Adobe Firefly, which I think we've talked about in past episodes, which is like their beta feature, but now it's a real thing, which is a new AI engine that is trained on a massive data set of images. Firefly is able to understand the content of an image and generate new content that is consistent with the style and context of the original image. And so basically you simply select an area of an image that you want to change, then type a text prompt that describes the change you want to make, and then it'll generate that new image with the changes you requested. And there's a ton of other tools to it as well, but that's kind of the gist of it. It's literally like you have an original image, you type in how you want Adobe to edit that image, and then it just does it.
Yes.
And so we both downloaded the feature. I have been too busy with projects to actually use it, but you've messed around with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Including using it on one of my photos to put me at the beach when I was nowhere near the beach. But what do you think of this new feature? It's kind of insane that all these Photoshop tools, now you can just type it in a text box.
Yeah.
And it makes all these crazy edits. So what's your experience been so far?
So my experience is it's been super fun, actually. And so I know it's probably not the take that everybody typically has with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting because, like you said, I took an image, testing it out, I took an image of you, and it was just an image, just like you standing there, made it look like you were at the beach, added surfers in the background, changed your shirt color.
Yeah.
But that whole process, within the matter of less than 4 minutes, I completely changed an image.
Yeah.
And it's impressive because that means I don't have to go to do what I was able to do with completely changing an image.
Yeah.
I would have had to go find reference photos. I would have had to go in and, import those photos, do all the editing for it, tweak it.
Yeah.
And this AI got you 80% of the way there.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do anything. And you never left the app.
Yep. That's
that's
right in there.
That's the big thing. You're not leaving the app.
Yeah. So with it, does it create new layers, or is it all on one layer, or how does it work?
So it completely creates a new layer.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so then from that layer, you're even able to go and so anytime you give it a prompt, it gives you roughly 3 examples to choose from.
Yeah.
So even after I've already selected something and started working on something else, I can actually go back to that layer and be actually, you know what? Instead of that first one, I want the third selection.
Oh, wow.
And then it'll change it to it.
Yeah. That's nuts. Because, obviously one of the most powerful tools in Photoshop, this is a basic feature of Photoshop, but is the layers option. So you're able to layer text or layer photos, or, even if you want to edit an image, you can paint over an image. And if you want to undecide that later, you just take that layer out. And if you're using your layers properly, any step can be undone.
Yes.
So that's kind of a crazy thing, is that a lot of the AI generated image, or the AI image generated softwares are it gives you one thing at once, and it's not you can change it except to give it another text prompt or be change this apart or about it, or especially in Midjourney, so many people are just trying to they'll change one word or 2 words to try to get it closer to what they want, and you're kind of sculpting an image.
Yeah.
this is kind of wild because you can just create a new layer, and if later on you don't like it, you just take out that layer, add another AI generated layer, and you can kind of like take the things you do like and not like, and create what you're eventually trying to make from all those layers.
Exactly. And I mean, the whole point of it is that it's non-destructive. So like, at any given point, you can just go right back into any layer and just keep going from there.
Yeah. And the blending is kind of nuts too.
Yeah.
Just like even in the example that you showed me, like it painted the beach behind me, but it was like perfectly that I was in focus and the beach was out of focus. And then also the colors that were used in the photo all matched, right? Like that's the hardest thing in Photoshop sometimes is literally like matching the subject to the background you're trying to paint behind them, because you're just like, if the light's off, you're just like, yeah, that looks Photoshopped.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing about this is like it was adjusting the sunset light on my skin so it looks like I'm actually in the image.
Yeah.
And all that normally manually takes so much time to like brush it and do your coloring and do your exposure and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it just did it in one click.
Yep. 100%. It's I mean, for me, like it took 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Like less than 4 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was like 3:36 or 3:30, something like that.
Sure.
So let's just say we'll just round up to 4. Right?
Yeah.
If that's what it's able to produce in 4 minutes, like what's it able to produce in 40 minutes on top of like my editing?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's so nuts. I think that there's infinite potential. I also think one of the coolest features of it is the fill part of it, right? So if you take like a vertical photo, right, and it's like in your, you know, typical phone dimensions and you want it to turn into a landscape photo, you can like have it fill in the sides with whatever you want. And the coolest thing is Adobe's been working on this for a while because they had like content aware fill. But really all that ever did was it kind of just like was a combination of their like heal tools and their like clipping tools, where it just like kind of take pieces from your background or what it assesses background and just plastered it along the back. And it looked good because it would still match the color, but you couldn't add anything. And now you can add whatever you want. Where it's like, yeah, I'm at the beach and I like have all the, you know, side things, and I'm like, maybe I want a fishing tournament to be going on next to me or something. And it like generates these fishermen and banners and all this kind of stuff. And you're just like, the possibilities are endless for the things you can add while also expanding the image. So any portrait photo you've ever taken, now you can just like turn it into a horizontal photo and just keep expanding the canvas of what you took, which is just nuts.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Wild. And the thing is, again, you're never leaving the app.
Yep.
You know, you're never leaving Photoshop. It's just you're letting it run and it just does it all.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's baked right in there. It's literally like a little text box that just pops up on your thing. And I don't know. I think the potential for designers, but for anybody, is just kind of ridiculous. And it's funny because I think we've talked about like year after year, Adobe's like prices go up and up and up. And you're like, really? I'm paying like $65 a month for all these things? Like, this is kind of crazy, Adobe. Like, what's the point? And now I'm like, oh, you've been working on this. And now I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely worth every dime because you're saving me so much time and it actually looks good. Like, I don't know if this is beta. I think it's like a legitimate, like generative fill. This is like the real thing that's out now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this looks like a polished product that you can actually start to use in designs in a legitimate way. And I don't know, man. It's crazy.
It's impressive. That's what it is.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you have Photoshop or, you know, are paying that $65 subscription to use it, you should definitely go check out the feature if you haven't already, especially to designers. I think it's a game changer for any kind of photo-based anything. I think it's probably still lacking. Like, this isn't anything to do with, like, text effects or any of the Illustrator things. Like, this is a Photoshop feature. But when it comes to photo editing, this is kind of like a game-changing feature to incorporate in your workflows. So definitely update your Photoshop to get this new feature. It's kind of sick.
It is.
So, cool. So now on to the main event, the thing you clicked on this episode to listen to. We're talking about one of my favorite topics in the design world, fonts. We are talking about fonts and why fonts matter. So this is all things typography. We're going to get into the kerning. We're getting into the spacing. We're going to get into all of that. What is a serif? We're going to answer some questions and just talk through fonts, but also specifically, since Token is a branding agency, I want to specifically talk about why fonts matter to your brand. And I think all brands, if you have a say in what a brand looks like, whether you're designing for brands or you're part of running brands, fonts make up a absolutely crucial part of your branding, and understanding how they work and how you can use them to your advantage is really important. And it's interesting because like there is the whole language part of branding and there's the copy, and it's like what you're actually saying, the messaging is really important. But what that messaging is held in is a font. So the way that people are even perceiving what you're writing about your brand is really important to take into consideration too. So it's kind of like this integral part of anything. And any logo with text in it is dealing with fonts as well. So it's like your name has to be good, but what also has to be good is the font that name is held in. So yeah, we're going to talk through fonts today, but Julian, I think it'd be helpful for everyone. Can you talk us through kind of the main categories of fonts? Because a lot of people know like the names of fonts, but like there are actual categories that make certain fonts distinctive from one another. So give us the main categories.
Yeah, so, there's different types of fonts. And so, like, the list is literally, like, there's, you have your serif fonts, you have your sans serif fonts, you have, like, your script fonts, you have your display fonts, and then you have your monospaced fonts. And each one have, like, different, like, properties or, like, characteristics about them that makes them fall within those categories.
Yeah.
And like those are just like the overarching categories. Not every font is like, oh, this is like this type of font. You know what I mean? Like,
sure, yeah.
There's going to be some fonts that are just like,
They're just in between some of those. Yeah.
Exactly.
They're kind of like genres, right?
Yes.
Where it's just like, it kind of can fit in between certain ones, but these are kind of the general groupings, like general genres of fonts, more or less.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? So, like, we can start off with, like, the serif fonts, because that's the one typically that, like, most people are, like, aware of, what I mean? The ones that they, like, know the most. And so, like, when you think of, like, a serif font, you're thinking of, like, a font that's, like, Times New Roman.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
It's like the classic example of a serif font.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, elementary school, like, you open up Word, like, first font that you pick is literally Times New Roman.
Yeah.
And so...
So what are the characteristics? Because the serif is like a factor of the font. That's like kind of the determining factor.
Yes. So like a serif is the portions at the end of the letters that kind of add like that little flourish, And so serif fonts are like the way that they get categorized are like fonts that have like flourishes at like the ends of like the letters, at the top or the bottom. But they also have like weight changes. And so like in the middle or on like, some fonts, it would be like any far left portion of this font is going to be thin while like the middle is going to be thick.
Yeah.
You know? So they have like different weight variations of like in the inner parts of them. That are thin or thick, just depending on like where they are.
Yeah. So they kind of have like different, these are kind of like the distinctive dimensions, and they're kind of like a purposely complicated font where it's like there's tons of edges. There's not exactly even spacing from one edge to the other. And then, the serif itself is like on the T of Times New Roman, there are those little vampire teeth that hold, hang down on the T, or there's like, it kind of spreads out into this base of the T. Those little endpoints is a serif.
Yes.
So it's like, so it like adds those little complicated features. But it's very, I don't know, not overly complicated, but it's just a little bit more complicated,
Yeah.
Like normally your handwriting, you're not going to include those little elements, but in a font you can. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And so they all, specifically sans serif fonts has like a time and place for them. And sans serif fonts typically gets used in books. They get used in like printouts or papers.
Yeah. Or serif, not sans serif.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry. Thank you. Serif fonts.
Yeah.
Not sans serif. They get used in books, papers. They're typically a little bit easier to read. Kind of like, it like forces you to slow down a little bit. Yeah. So like you're able to actually like read the word. Yeah. And so like that's where it gets used a lot in like for educational purposes. Yeah. Like you'll see it a lot in like kids' books. You don't see other types of font in like kids' books. You'll see like typically a serif font in like kids' book or even if you see like the alphabet letters, it's always like a serifed font.
Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons as to why, or people have different opinions as to why they are used. Like it could be just historical or culturally, like they're also kind of the oldest category of fonts, like the printing press was a serif font, you know? So it's like, I think over time society has learned to read those the easiest, especially in like paragraph text.
Yes.
But yeah, there's definitely different angles for it.
Yeah. So do you have like a specific type of like serif font that you like? Like what do you go to like serif font?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. It's like Times New Roman is like the classic one, but it's honestly like actually in design, it's not always the most useful. I'm actually a big Garamond guy.
Really?
Cormont Garamond, yeah.
All right.
I think that's honestly one of the best serif fonts that I can recommend. It has its spacing a little bit better. The curves just feel a little bit less rigid.
Yes.
And yeah, when you like, I think that just spacing is overall better. So yeah, that's kind of my go-to.
Interesting. So for me, that's my go-to. I specifically, it became my go-to in college.
Okay.
Because like I had to write a paper, the only paper I had to write in design school.
Okay. Yeah, it's like good to write papers?
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. The only paper I had to write in design school, and it was about specifically Garamond and like the guy who created Garamond.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh, I actually didn't know that.
And so because like I had to like dissect the font so hard, I was like, I actually like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. So what's our next category?
So our next one's going to be sans serif fonts.
Okay.
And so sans serif fonts are not serif fonts.
They don't have serifs.
They don't have serifs.
Yeah, it's kind of your classic like fiction and nonfiction situation where you're like, fiction, that means true. It's like, no, fiction means not true. Nonfiction means not true.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, so it's kind of that, where we started with serifs because sans serifs mean cutting off those little vampire teeth.
Bro, it's one of those things where like even as like I've been doing this for like what 10 years now, I'm still like, wait, which one's which?
I know, whoever named that I mean, I understand that serifs came first, but it would have made more sense to have like, I don't know. I guess it does make sense because it means without, but still.
But still, it still confuses me.
Yeah.
Like I could easily confuse the two in a conversation.
Yeah, you literally did while describing serifs. It's all good though. So what are sans serifs?
Yeah, so sans serifs are the fonts that obviously don't have the serifs. The big difference between like a sans serif font and a serif font in use case is that a sans serif font typically is used for digital media. It makes it's actually easier to read sans serif fonts on digital screens than it is a serif font.
Yeah.
Again, I have no idea why people, but like it's definitely
Yeah.
you can just see it.
Yeah, I think they were just used a lot more in the digital age or like the coming of like technology and screens and stuff like that. It just so happened that people use them more. And I actually think, I mean, my theory, I don't know, this is not a proven theory or from any kind of article. It could be true, it could be not. But that because like computers started off with very pixelated screens, you had to create a font that was very straight lines. And if you added serifs to that, it probably wouldn't even show up because of the pixels, or it would just look messy. So they had to invent they had to just cut the excess stuff so you could see the words clearly on a screen. And then just over time, they're like, well, this is the default font on computers, even as they add pixels. Dang. Does that make sense?
To be honest, it makes sense.
That's my logic, at least.
Here's the thing. You probably created a conspiracy theory that's like fairly decent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's actually true.
Yeah. So there you go. You heard it here first. That's facts. But yeah, they are typically used with like, you'll see them in screens or just like any kind of digital media, digital facing things. Like, when you're scrolling through Instagram, every caption, Instagram uses it. A lot of news places use it. Although some that are newspapers will use serifs to try to feel like a newspaper, but that's a different thing. Yeah. So cut the serifs off. You have sans serifs. What's the next category?
Next one is script fonts.
Okay.
And so script fonts are a little bit different than, the rigidity of like serif and sans serif fonts.
Yeah.
It's more flowy. It's more so like cursive handwriting.
Yeah.
It's the typical like when you go to like a wedding or you get like a wedding invitation, like the cursive to make it look like fancy.
Yep.
Yeah. It's that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Or everyone who makes a logo for their own business ends up throwing the script font in there. And if you design it on Canva, I know you used playlist script. Like I know that's the one that you used.
That's exactly the one.
Yes, so it's like it's the cursive, the handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
I always pick on playlist script because it's actually the best handwriting font that most people know.
Yes.
But it's just such a dead giveaway. If you used a playlist script in your logo, I'm just like, man.
It's like you did this on Canva.
You did. I know you don't have an SVG version of that logo. There's no way. Yeah, that is rasterized. I know it. So yeah, but it's handwriting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's always used for like typically like announcements or something.
Yeah.
It's never for like a paragraph.
Yeah. Can you
trying to read
imagine
it.
reading a paragraph in handwritten font? Oh my gosh.
It's like trying to read the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, I'm surprised that website doesn't use a script font to just make it that much more frustrating. But yeah, it's used really well in like logo design or just like any kind of, headlines are really good for it. Any kind of announcement, that's a good way to put it. They tend to be used for.
Yeah. And so, typically like the use case for that too is just like it's like, which kind of leads into like our next one of being like a display font. Mm-hmm. It's typically like they can be used interchangeably.
Yeah.
For a display font, and it still falls under like a script, the script font category.
Yeah. So, okay, like display fonts is a interesting category to talk about because it's like that is such a generic word, and it's because it's kind of a generic category.
Yeah.
And technically, every category that we've mentioned so far fits under display font.
Yeah.
But there are some characteristics that make it unique. It's kind of like the catch-all.
Yes.
It's kind of like the indie music category where you're just like, what does that mean? Like,
Or is it like the Hufflepuff of people?
Oh, yeah.
Or Hufflepuff of fonts.
The Hufflepuff of fonts. Hot take. Is script Slytherin? I don't know. Script fonts are Slytherin.
For all we know. Who knows?
Wait, but okay, do you have like any kind of way to describe a display font that sets it apart?
Yeah, so the whole purpose of a display font is to be large and grab attention.
Yeah.
So typically like your headlines, titles, like if you see like a movie poster, like those would be considered like display fonts.
Sure.
And they're meant to be like loud, large, bold, chunky, just like thick text.
Yeah, because it's meant to have a short number of letters involved typically, and it's definitely more like your experimental fonts typically fall in this category where you're like staring at it for 2 minutes and you're like, oh, that's the letter S, and you like didn't realize it at first. Like it's normally those fonts where you have to stare at it for a second. But yeah, so it's typically used for like movie posters or just bigger print things.
Exactly.
Fewer letters kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, display fonts is kind of a catch-all between a lot of different stuff. Because then you have your 3D fonts, your bubble fonts. You're like, there's tons of subcategories in all these too.
Yeah.
Your Y2K, every Y2K font probably falls under display fonts.
Bringing back memories of
man.
like trying to make my own font back in like the day.
Me Googling Powerpuff Girls font just to find that it doesn't exist. It probably exists now. But display fonts.
Yeah, and then, the last one is the monospace fonts. Mm-hmm. And so this one, it's interesting because you can easily confuse this with sans serif fonts.
Yeah.
And so the point of a monospace font is that it has, like, everything is fixed in terms of, like, width and just, like, spacing all around. So, like, the line that goes up to make a T is going to be the same size width-wise as the crossbar across the T. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the same width as like the O, as the line that makes the O.
Yeah.
And so everything is like a predetermined like width, and like that's the width that's used throughout to make every single letter.
No, monotype fonts, honestly, to me are like if an engineer was forced to design a font.
Yes.
Because it's like, well, practically, mathematically, this is the best font you can make. And it's like, it ends up being some of the most or least interesting fonts in my opinion because it's so rigid, so by the book that it's like, I don't even, like nothing stands out. It's so uniform that it almost like blends in. which can be really useful in certain scenarios, or like especially in web design when spacing is like a huge thing, can definitely come in handy. So I'm not trying to hate on them,
Yes.
but it definitely seems to be the least artistic category
Yes.
of fonts.
I feel like that's the font that always gets paired with like script fonts. You know what I mean? It's always like
Yeah.
something like flowy and scripty, and then like
Yeah.
like the monospace
Yeah.
font at the bottom to like
Yeah.
describe like what it is.
Well, I think they're equally not useful, but for totally different reasons. Like the monospace font is not useful because it's not interesting. The script font is way too interesting that it's not useful because you're just like, what is going on
It's
here?
like two extremes. You got to find the balance here.
Yeah. No, it's true. Oh my gosh. So yeah, they definitely get paired together. I don't know. They're definitely not the most popular categories of fonts.
Yes.
But pretty much all fonts do fall into those, what was that, 5 categories? So it's kind of helpful, at least for you to know how to assess fonts or to kind of look up fonts to at least know those categories or know what to avoid. And every category kind of has its own things that they're used for practically. Like we were mentioning, like display fonts are used for display stuff, for big things, for logos. You know, serif fonts are typically used for books and paragraphs, and like they all have a practical use, which is why they're invented. So it's good to know those rules, and you can always break those rules, but that's kind of the general genre,
Yes.
you know, of the fonts. So I wanted to launch into the next part, which is to talk about like specific fonts, and all these fonts fit into the categories that we just talked about,
Yep.
and kind of just talk through just the ones that you should know and then why you should know them, and just interesting things of like, why are these the biggest fonts that you see everywhere?
Yep.
And probably after this episode, if you didn't already before, you're going to look at company logos and you're going to be like, oh, I know what font that is.
Yep.
And you're going to become that guy. You're going to become me. You're going to be able to walk in and you're just like, oh, I know what they used. Like,
Yep.
and doesn't this happen to you? Do you ever like walk into a place and you see a logo and you're just like, yep, I know exactly what logo that is?
For years, I was like, I don't never want to be that person.
Yep.
And then sure enough, like without even thinking about it, I just became that person. I'm like, yeah, that's this font or that's that font.
Yeah,
And
it happens to you, honestly.
Yeah.
I think the more you design, the more you just get struck by it. You're just like, yep, I know exactly what that is. Like,
The best / worst is like seeing a font and being like, I know this font,
yep,
and I have no idea what it is.
yep,
You know?
yeah,
And it's like just because like someone tweaked it just enough where it's just like, this looks so familiar,
yeah.
but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and you just can't place it. And there's no Shazam for fonts, you know? There's no secret to figuring out what a font is. You just have to know. If
Yup.
you know, you know.
Exactly.
It's the ultimate gatekept collection. It's fonts, man.
For real.
But yeah, these will at least give you some, a minor education in the fonts that you should know. This, you can carry a conversation at a party about fonts, which, all the parties you go to, everyone's talking about fonts these days. So we'll start with the biggest and one of my personal favorite fonts, Helvetica. So I do love me some Helvetica, but to me, I felt like this is the most important font to talk about. So it is a sans serif font, and you're probably all familiar with it because it's literally used everywhere. I think when you Google it, it's probably the #1 font ever used and ever created, and it's like one of the oldest. It's not the oldest one that's on this list, but it's extremely old. The Target logo uses Helvetica. The Microsoft logo uses Helvetica. North Face uses Helvetica. Toyota uses Helvetica. And then my personal favorite is that all New York City subway terminals use Helvetica.
See, that's nice.
So if you've been to New York City, you know the Helvetica font. And that's just so dope. Like, what a flex
Yes.
for a designer to be like, yeah, the most, the biggest city on earth uses my font. Like,
That's a big flex.
it's kind of sick. It's kind of crazy. Oh, for the Office fans out there, I'm pretty sure the Office uses Helvetica on the nameplate.
Yeah, that's right.
No, I'm thinking about. I mean, there's a million examples.
Yeah.
It's literally one of the most popular fonts out there. But it's really funny because I think designers, it's just like anything else. Like it goes in fashion, goes in out of fashion. To me, Helvetica has stood the test of time as just like the most versatile font that's out there. And I feel like you can use it in anything. I feel like you can use it in logos. You can use it in paragraph text. You can use it anywhere. But what are your thoughts on Helvetica?
So I've definitely, like Helvetica for me was like discovering it in design school and just being like, this is the best font ever.
Everyone has that phase. Yeah.
And then like finishing like school and just being like, everybody's using Helvetica. I can't use it anymore.
Yep. You want to be different. Yep.
And then like finding myself like a couple years later going back into Helvetica. I was like, why did I stop using Helvetica?
Yep. It's so true. It's really true. It's like the Beyonce of fonts. We're just like, everyone has a phase where we're like, wow, Beyonce is the best in the world. And then you're just like, I don't want to be like a Beyonce fan. But then her song comes on, at the wedding, and you're just like, you're not going to not turn up to it. Like,
Exactly.
It's always a good time. Like, I don't know. I just feel like Helvetica has stood the test of time. But you do try to be like the independent creative who's like, oh, I never use Helvetica,
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, those C's are totally wrong. Like, you find ways to critique it.
The worst was like, I remember at one point I was just like, let me dissect Helvetica, and then seeing like all like the natural imperfections.
Yeah.
But then to realize like they were purposefully made imperfections.
Yep.
To make it more legible.
Yeah.
And it was just like, yeah, I am nowhere near this level.
Yeah. It's kind of nuts because it really is like the best example of a font being perfectly imperfect. And I think it is like really artistic. Like when you begin to like use it a lot more, there will be so many things that bug you where you're just like, this letter is always spaced wrong. Or this, it doesn't really line up perfectly. Or like this edge doesn't match this edge. Or there's portions of like, like certain letters that like the left side doesn't match the right side. And you're just like, this isn't even centered. Like, I don't even know. But then when you use it and you put it all together, it's like all of that, it all makes sense kind of a thing, So I don't know. But in my opinion, I think Helvetica is one of the best fonts you could use. I still stand by it, I think I also definitely design with it like a lot.
Yeah.
Like I think that's probably still my go-to.
Yeah.
And I'm not the indie hipster designer that you want me to be. But no, I stand by Helvetica. But Helvetica is definitely one you should know. It's definitely one of the most popular ones. So here's another popular one I wanted to bring up. Arial.
Okay.
So Arial is this is not the mermaid princess. This is Arial. It was actually created in response to Helvetica. I don't know if you knew this a bit of font history, but Arial was actually invented in the 80s because Helvetica's licensing fees were so expensive because everybody was using it that someone was like, you know what? I'm going to make my own font and it's going to be better than Helvetica. And so they made Arial, which is like, if anybody has ever typed in a Word document, that's actually your default font.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest deals that Arial, the font, got, I'm talking about it like it's a player manager or like a company, but was actually with Microsoft.
Really?
And that was like their exclusive font for a really long time. I don't think Microsoft invented it. But it was like in the 80s, Arial was invented, and as Microsoft was building their computers, that just became the default font because like the licensing fees were so low or cheap, like free at that point. And they're like, well, we can't use Helvetica. And then it literally like as Microsoft grew, Arial grew, and now it's like just a household name in fonts, which is kind of nuts.
That's actually pretty wild. I didn't realize all of that.
Yeah. So Arial came out of Helvetica, which is super interesting. But it's a cool font. I think I don't love it. I think there's a lot of pieces of it's really funny. I'm just like, yeah, it's cool. I'm glad there's a competitor to Helvetica, but honestly, it's definitely not like my favorite.
Yeah.
So I will say, I think it's one of the best sans serif fonts for paragraph text.
Yes.
And so I think that's a hard thing to do, is to keep like paragraph text that is readable and like the weight, like the normal weights. So that's another thing about fonts, is that like they all have different weights, right? Where the line size is like a different thickness. And I think certain ones of these, like Helvetica Bold is like the best version of Helvetica in my opinion. But Helvetica Light is kind of like, it's kind of weak. Doesn't really make sense. Whereas something like Arial, where I'm like, the lightest version of Arial or normal or whatever it is actually looks the best and the cleanest. And I think one of the distinguishing factors, Arial's like got really clean lines. It's really rounded. The spacing is correct on every single letter. It is super consistent. And what's funny is, I guess while they were designing Arial, they wanted it to feel like slimmer and lighter than Helvetica. That was like a main point in designing it. And I was like, they achieved it. But to me, it honestly like is too skinny. You know, like
Yeah,
I want a
okay.
little more weight,
Yeah.
you know, on that font. Like it doesn't really hold up. And when you do try to use it in display situations or any kind of like bigger situation design wise, it's too much lightweight empty space. It
Yeah.
just doesn't hit the same, you know?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So for me, like for years, I refused to use Arial
Really?
because
Anti-Arial.
anti-Arial because it was the font, like it was like that default font.
Yeah, it's the Microsoft Word font.
Yeah,
It
you know,
feels like even more lame than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I always felt like it was a cop out. If anything.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, I'm using Arial because I don't know what font to use.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until like I actually like there was like a project that I had to use it on.
Yeah.
And like I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't bad.
Yeah.
And that's literally it though. Like
Mm-hmm.
once I started blowing it up and like making it bolder and bigger, I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it works when you're not paying attention to it, but it also has such a strong like 80s to 2000s feel to me that I don't know, it's but not in a cool way.
Yeah.
It just like I don't know. It doesn't work.
It feels like when I open up a Word document and like I'm picking Times New Roman,
Yeah.
it's like, what am I doing?
Yeah. No, it's true. So speaking of Times New Roman, that was the next one I wanted to bring up actually, because I feel like that's like the OG font. It's the one that everybody knows. And so it's like, yeah, we have to talk about it. We obviously use it as the example for a sans serif. Nope, a serif.
Serif font.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
I'm supposed
Right?
to be the professional. This is horrible. But for serif fonts. But do you know the day that it was, or the year that it was invented?
Truthfully, no idea.
Give a guess. Because I just found this out.
Like 1800s? No.
No, not 1800s, but old, almost 100 years ago. So it was actually invented in 1932, which, yes, that was almost 100 years ago.
I was like, wait, I was like 1923?
Yeah, no, 1930, 32, 33, something like that. So 90 years ago, I guess. But yeah, so it's old. And I guess the reason that it was invented was literally for a local newspaper.
Stop.
And it was like meant to be the newspaper's font. And so they literally crafted it to work with their publications and make it more readable on their newspapers and like make it a more engaging thing. So it was originally developed for newspapers.
Yeah.
And so that was its original use case, was for long paragraph text. And so then it's just funny how literally everything since, for 90 years, it's like, well, if it's in paragraph form, you're going to use Times New Roman.
Bro, that's wild. Can you imagine designing something that's going to outlive you?
Yeah.
Like, that is wild. That's
Yeah.
impressive. That's actually very impressive.
Yeah, and it's so ubiquitous with news as a thing that it's literally like I was mentioning this earlier, like online publications will use, and they might not use actual Times New Roman, they're probably variations of it, but it's essentially an ode to Times New Roman because people think news and they think Times New Roman. And they almost like trust a news source more because they're using this font just instinctually. Or you'll know you're reading a news article that's like traditional news
Yeah.
because it's in Times New Roman.
See, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I can't even imagine designing something that's that like just ingrained in culture. That's just like, yep, that's what it is.
That's really impressive.
Yeah. So it's definitely most useful for paragraph text. I think there's better variations than Times New Roman. I think there's been a million serif fonts after that have, I don't know, done better things, like Garamond.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfection of Times New Roman, but definitely one that you need to know about, that everybody knows about. But next one I wanted to bring up is a very brand-specific font,
Okay.
Futura.
Futura.
Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Futura?
I've always enjoyed Futura. And like when you think of Futura, you always think of like, at least for me, I always think of like the 1960s, like NASA.
Yeah.
Like whatever like they were making or designing, everything was just Futura.
Yeah.
Like,
It's really
Yeah.
true. Well, I mean, and then I think a lot of modern logos actually have Futura snuck in, which I feel like it's actually probably the most used font in the modern context, at least from a branding perspective. So here's this list. This is just a couple that found out. These are brands that use Futura in their logo: Nike, Cisco, Gillette, Omega, like the watches, PayPal, Volkswagen, and then the hype beast brand themselves, Supreme. And I was like, wow, those are all like a variety of different markets. And I was just like, no, it's not. I mean, then you think about it, Future's extremely clean.
Yeah.
It has like, it's got like your corners, like your edges, but it's also very round and modern. Like it's somewhere, it doesn't have serifs, but like it's got enough like chunk to it that you can use it in a display sense. You can use it in a paragraph sense. But yeah, I was kind of surprised. I was like, wow, that many brands? Like,
Yeah, that's really surprising.
Yeah.
I think for me, every time I think of Futura, I always think of like something like thin.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And like
yeah,
to say, like now that I'm thinking on like Nike, Supreme, Gillette, they all have like, it's all like the thicker weights.
Yeah.
Like bold or black.
yeah.
And it's like, whoa.
And it's sneaky too. All of those, they like shift it so it looks like it's angled forward.
Yeah.
Which I was like, why? Why do they all do that? But like literally those Supreme, Gillette, Nike, they all shear it.
Yeah.
Just that little bit to make it look like an aggressive, edgy thing.
Man.
Which I'm like, I don't know many other fonts that have like, because it's not italicized necessarily, but it is kind of like that sheer forward.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's not many fonts that people always edit the same way, but all of those brands edited their logo to look the exact same.
Man.
Yeah.
I think I need to start using Futura again.
I mean, it's a good font. It's kind of weird. Like the V,
Yes.
goes under the line and stuff. And like, there's certain letters that I'm just like, why?
Yep.
Like, what's the point of that? And it's not in a fun Helvetica way where you're like, the imperfections make it great. You're like, no, that's just wrong.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely a good one for logo design. Yeah. So yeah, if you're making your own logo on Canva, well, I don't know if Canva lets you use Futura for free, but that's a good one. I feel like you can make a pretty solid logo out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the best branding one that I have. But I feel like those 4 fonts, I'm like, those are kind of the big ones that everyone should know. And there's so many variations on all of those that if you're just like Futura variation font, you'll find them. But those are the ones I would recommend using, at least from a branding or design context. But the last thing I wanted to talk about is, so like we talked about these good fonts, these historic fonts that you need to know about. But then there are the infamous fonts. And there are some that I'm just like, I want to play a game with you called Is It Bad or Is It Good with these fonts? Because I feel like we have to think about like, what is the purpose of a font, right? Like it is to be iconic. It's also probably to communicate the words that are under it. So it can't be too distracting. But like some fonts do take on such a strong identity that it gives something so much more character, right? Like if you put the title of your book in Times New Roman, people are going to be like, oh yeah, trusted book, paragraph, I'm ready to read. Versus if you put it in another font, it's like, oh no, like I don't even know what to do here. So like picking the right font is important. But some of these fonts have like such an identity that, yeah, you already know where I'm going with this. But I'm just like, is it good or is it bad? So yeah, we're about to have the Nickelback conversation with fonts. So first off, Bleeding Cowboy. Is it good or is it bad?
It is so bad. I cannot. Okay. The only time I've ever in my life thought it was good was probably when I was like 7.
Okay.
I was like, oh, that's cool. No,
Yeah.
it's not. Even
No.
like 7-year-old me had no opinion back then. I should not have been making any type of opinion. I was like, it is one of the worst fonts. Like,
Yeah.
Because it's so if you don't know what it looks like, stop the podcast right now and
Yeah,
go look it
go
up.
look up Bleeding Cowboy.
It is the ugliest. Like it's one of those like someone who's not a designer went and made a font and was just like, let me make it kind of grungy. Let me make it look like
Yes.
it's like,
So grungy.
yeah, like let me make it look like, let me add some like flourishes.
Yep.
And it is not attractive at all.
It's kind of crazy. So like, I mean, I guarantee you've seen it in the wild. And if you've ever been to a barbecue restaurant, I would say 5 times out of 8, I don't know why I use that fraction, you're going to see a Bleeding Cowboy incorporated into that logo somewhere.
100%.
Like barbecue restaurants love this font. And honestly, like I have no idea who invented this. Like it's someone, but it is like peak 2006 like grunge culture.
Yes.
Like is like just like we needed to look edgy and like do you remember when websites were all about like the like spray paint aesthetic and it was all just like so like you're like, yeah, this is tough.
Yup.
And you're just like, what?
It is not.
Yeah,
is.
it's something else. So Okay, so Bleeding Cowboy, you put that in the very bad category.
Very bad. I believe wholeheartedly that font gets used by people who want to show off like a Texas vibe,
Yeah.
who are not from Texas.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, cultural appropriation font for Texans specifically. Southerners should be offended when people use Bleeding Cowboy. No, it's so, yeah, it's so true. Yeah, that's so funny though. Because, yeah, it really is. I mean, it's just such a funny font. So, okay, I'll let you have that one. That's in the bad category. Okay, next one. Is it good or is it bad? Papyrus.
Ooh, this one's tough.
This is a tough one.
This is, yeah.
So, like, papyrus is like your classic, like, well, first of all, if you grew up in the church,
Yeah.
every church designer used this
Yep.
on, like, their Easter Sunday materials, no matter what, or just, like, their general stuff. Like, papyrus was everywhere.
Yep.
It's that, like, kind of Middle Eastern, it's a little bit grungy,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just Arial with a little bit more character, kind of thing.
If actually is papyrus the font that's used for like the Avatar movie?
Yes, that is the
Okay,
classic
okay,
example
yeah.
of it. Like the original
Yeah.
Avatar logo was in papyrus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a meme in itself. That the best movie or the best selling movie of all time, at least to this point, used papyrus in their logo. Like,
if that's not a flex, I don't know what is.
like that designer, I want to shake your hand. Like, honestly, respect that you were able to slip that past all the executives. Like, yeah.
Honestly, I feel like it had to have started out as a joke.
Yeah.
And just be like, oh, this joke got so out of hand, and
Yeah.
we have to go with this now.
Yeah. Oh, it's probably like, oh, we need a logo today. Let's throw something together.
Yeah.
Papyrus, Avatar, boom, done. Make it blue. And it's like, oh no.
You know that designer presenting it with literally just like chuckling at themselves as they're typing it in.
Literally.
And then like as they're like, yeah, this is a good one. They're like,
You're
we
like,
messed up.
great. I meant for that to be the permanent one. So yes, this is the Avatar font. This is, Papyrus. Is it good or is it bad?
That one's tough. I think because it has such a bad rap, like you naturally just like, oh no, that's bad.
Yeah.
But like if you actually look at it and if it's used like in a decent way,
Yeah.
like it could
Yeah.
on a very low scale, it could like be like, okay,
Yeah.
you know? But like it should be a font that I should not be seeing out in the wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I think that's where like it's one of those like
Yeah.
it's so overused.
Yep. I've been seeing it though, like in kind of like making a comeback in like modern like natural food stores or different locally owned like, or I've seen it. Oh, dude, I've seen so many CBD shops use
Yes.
papyrus, and I was just like, guys, please don't do this.
Yes.
Like, it's just, I don't know why. Like maybe people think it has like an earthy tone to it or like a
Yep.
more natural feel to it, but yeah. It's tough. I mean, it can be used well,
I
right?
feel like out of these two fonts so far, it has the potential to claw itself out of like like this like bad font purgatory.
Yeah.
But it's still got some work to do.
Still in the bad category for you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. But it's like close.
It's close. Yeah.
It's definitely not worse than Bleeding Cowboy.
No, Bleeding Cowboy is rough.
Yeah.
That is.
Fair enough. So I'll leave you with one last one for good or bad, and you know what it is. But I think this is more of a debate these days than ever before. Comic Sans.
Comic Sans is the devil.
Oh, really?
Comic Sans is the worst. Like the moment, like for me, Comic Sans is the moment I like read a document in Comic Sans, I will not take you seriously.
Yep.
I'm like, no, like whoever thought this was like a funny joke, like, no,
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Which is, oh, dude, but here's the thing though. I feel like it's transcending how bad it is because it's been the worst for so long
Yeah.
that now it kind of has its own identity as like being the worst, which is why it's kind of fun. Because to me, here's the thing. Here's my take. I think Comic Sans is Crocs. I think it's so hideous and just practical and has its own identity and is just so its own thing that it's like you kind of have to respect it,
Yeah.
And it's been around for so long and people are still writing emails in Comic Sans and using it on menus unashamedly that it's like, you know what? This is kind of hilarious. Like maybe it's actually a good font after all. And like I feel like it's the same way that people talk about Crocs, where they're just like, oh yeah, that shoe was hideous. Like I can't believe. And then you're like, those have been around for 20 years now.
Yep.
And everybody who wears Crocs loves Crocs. But they don't want to say they love Crocs. Like, you're not supposed to wear them to a nice dinner, but like you still kind of want to,
Yep.
where it's like, and I think it's one of those things that it's just so its own thing. I think it might actually be a good font.
I don't know. I just can't get past like, like I'm definitely from like that era where like when websites were first being made, and like they would use Comic Sans for it, and it's just like
It's the fun font,
I was
Yeah.
like, this is what you're describing as fun?
Yeah.
Like what? And so I just feel like it just lives so far in like the cheesy corner for me
It is.
that it's just like, nah, I can't do that.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I want to argue that it's good. I feel like there's a time in our culture where Comic Sans will become like a great font, like unapologetically a great font. I'm predicting that right now because I think it's so bad, and you can only hate something for so long before it becomes a meme these days. And I'm just like, I think Comic Sans is on that trajectory where it's just like it's going to become so iconic for being bad that people are going to want to use it as like an anti-design thing,
Yes.
and it'll become like a legitimate recognized font.
It's funny you say that because that's literally what I was thinking. I was like, what's going to happen is like this new round of designers that are coming up right now
Oh yeah,
are going to be using it unironically.
yeah,
And it's just going to now be a thing.
Yeah.
And now we're going to start seeing like legit businesses using it. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to sit there looking at it like, oh no.
I feel like it'll be like the modern art movement where people went from like hyper realistic painting to like, this is a red square. It's like, this is a red square that costs $35 million. It's like, that's
Yep.
what it is.
Yep.
Like, this will be Comic Sans where it's just like, yeah, your logo isn't Comic Sans. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And it's just like, nothing. This is brilliant. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like countercultural brands, like people are looking for ways to stand out, like to not use Futura. Like, if I saw a product on the shelves that had Comic Sans on it as like their main font, I might buy it just for the meme of it.
Man.
Like,
I'd be looking at it. I'm like, am I in like the dollar section?
yeah, it's one thing. Yeah, if it's in like a grocery store, it's another thing if it's like in the Apple store and you're like, there's no way I'm paying that price for something printed with Comic Sans on it.
No.
Yeah.
That would be the day that I will not become an Apple fan.
Yeah. I can't wait for your iPhone to have it iPhone written in Comic Sans on the back.
That would be the day. Literally, I'll be texting you like, all right, what's
Yeah.
been happening
What
in Android?
phone? Yeah. What pixel should I get? Oh, man. I don't know, man. I think Comic Sans is the most debatable out of the three. I would say,
Oh.
yeah. If you had to rank those three, though, what's the worst still?
The worst?
Comic Sans, Papyrus, Bleeding Cowboy.
Bleeding
You have to
Cowboy.
decide.
Hands down, Bleeding Cowboy.
Yeah.
I think, even though I may not enjoy it, Comic Sans would be the one. Out of those three, Comic Sans now is the one closest out of like
Yeah.
this purgatory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I think they're all on a do not use list. Like
Yes.
they're all on a do not fly list. But
Comic Sans can easily get itself off if you're
Comic
trying a
Sans,
little
you
bit
could,
better.
I feel like you could hide it the best too.
Yeah.
Like if I could, I could put some, some texture in it, outline it.
Mm-hmm.
I could mess with it to get away with it. I don't know if I'm bold enough to like really do that, but I think out of the three, Bleeding Cowboy would be the hardest by far.
No.
There's no way I could ever use that anywhere.
Like, it's literally like every like country band.
Yeah.
From like, I can't tell you how many country bands.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I've seen like advertisements for.
It's true.
And it's like, bro, we're from upstate New York.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I know. It's just, yeah. And it's so unusable too. It's barely readable. It
Yeah.
doesn't print well. It's so like,
It's
it's
huge.
way too textured. Yeah, it is huge.
It takes up so much space.
Yeah. Yeah, like you can only fit a few letters on it, like design wise. Imagine reading a paragraph of Bleeding Cowboy.
Oh,
That is hell.
that
Like
is-
literally, like
yes.
describe hell to me. It's having to read a book written in Bleeding Cowboy font. I don't care what the book is.
No.
Like-
it's going to be, it's not even a book anymore at this point. It's like banners.
Yeah.
Like every page, just like you're flipping a banner.
That's literally what it is. Dang. Yeah. Man. If you really, I feel like that's like the website we talked about earlier, where it's like it's breaking all the design rules. If you printed a book in Bleeding Cowboy, that's the book equivalent of the worst design choice you could ever make.
Yes. Hands down.
Man. So anyways, yeah, look for your Bleeding Cowboy, your Token Creatives merch to be dropping soon. We should do that. We should make t-shirts with your Token Creatives and Bleeding Cowboy.
Oh, that'd actually be really fun.
Yeah, let us know if you buy one, if you'd actually spend money on that, because that'd be hilarious. I would wear that.
I'd wear it too.
Maybe we should make that. That's hilarious. But yeah, I think fonts, they just play such a big role, and it's so interesting to talk about them because it's one of those things where it's such a part of design that it kind of just blends in. Like people are focused on like logos or like the spacing or the colors and all that kind of stuff. But fonts are a crucial part in understanding how to design well and how to curate things well for your brand. So hopefully we gave you some suggestions of fonts to use and fonts to steer clear of, especially in your brand work. I would say my last bit of font advice to anybody is stay consistent. I think brands jump around from font to font to font so quickly, or even people making their own social media posts will be like, well, today we're going to use this one, or we're going to use this one the next day. If you can just pick one or two and set those guidelines for your brand, it's going to look so much better, no matter what font it is, than if you're jumping around from 5 to 6 different fonts on all your different platforms. Because consistency is so crucial when it comes to font use, you know?
No, exactly. And like that's what ends up actually helping to cultivate your brand's personality. You know, so like definitely having that consistency and just sticking to the one. Because like nothing's worse than going to like an Instagram page and seeing like 50 posts and all of them look different.
Yeah, it looks sloppy. And it's like you're just like, what is your identity then from a design perspective? And it's like, well, there is none because it's everything. And if it's every font, there's no identity, you know? So, I mean, even if you're drawn towards like an impact font or, a playlist script, at least stay consistent with using that font every single time and determine like what's your headline font, what's your paragraph font. They might be the same thing, but keep it simple. And your brand's gonna thank you for it, you know. But it's fun, man. Fonts are fun. I think there's we can have a whole other part too about creating fonts and use cases of fonts and variable font widths and how to tweak your fonts to like we can go really in depth, but I think that's a good overview of fonts for today. So Bleeding Cowboy. What a font. So last up, we always have to end the episode. We're talking what's in the queue. So we're going to talk about favorite music, something to listen to this week. Mine is just one track that I wanted to mention. I've been talking about albums or 200 song albums. So we got one song that you need to listen to, and you'll probably listen to it on repeat.
All right.
It's by Berlioz, and it's called Wash My Sins Away. And it's not a worship song. It's not Christian at all. It's this house song. And it's like jazz house. So it's like electronic jazz music. It's one of the coolest tracks I've ever heard. It's so chill. It's such a vibe. Honestly, like I've been starting off my work days just putting this track on, and it just like gets you into just such a great headspace. I feel like it's good mental health, good clarity to listen to that track. I think it's Berlioz is how you spell the artist's name. Probably not American, and I'm sorry if I'm an American butchering Berlioz. I don't know. Either way, look it up. It's such a good track. You have to add it to your playlist.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that one out. No, for me, I've been falling back into like music that like I know and feel comfortable with. You know, so right now it's actually been City in Color. And the song specifically is The Grand Optimist.
Oh, yeah. That's a great track.
Yeah.
Is that off Little Hell?
Ooh, was it Little Hill? I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That by far is my favorite City in Color album ever.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And so he was, I think the closest he came was like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he just toured through the area, right? Yeah.
And so I think he was like an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, part of me was like very much like, I want to go.
Yeah.
But it was also like, I have responsibilities I need to do. I can't just do this on a weekday night.
No, it's true. No, Dallas Green, one of the best Canadian artists out there, man.
For real.
But I've loved all his music projects.
Still don't know, is it Alexis on Fire?
I don't know. I had a friend who was super into that band, and I think he said that it's Alexis on Fire.
Okay.
And he had like he had a tour t-shirt and he had seen them live a couple times. So I was like, I trust you. Not that they've said it live in person, but like, I think it's Alexis on Fire.
Okay.
But everyone says Alex is on fire because that's what it says too. And there's no spacing. See, that's the importance of a font. The importance of a font, man. The spacing matters, okay? And man, if that was in Bleeding Cowboy, you would not even know what the band is.
I have no idea what it is. It's
Yeah.
just like, what is this hot mess?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go to the concert. I wouldn't have given him a listen.
Yeah. Dude really did take such a shift to go from that Screamo band to the most acoustic, soulful music you've ever heard.
Oh, for real.
Heck of a transition, you know?
It's impressive. I mean, I'll give him props to it.
Yeah.
But even like, Alexis on Fire, like I'll still listen to some of those songs. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still very in touch with my grunge side. As much as I hate on Bleeding Cowboy, the music side of where Bleeding Cowboy represents, like, that's me, man.
Yeah.
It's there.
Man, no, I've been phasing out of my grunge period. I'm falling back into, unfortunately for some people who may or not agree with this, I'm falling back into my summertime like country.
Oh, all right. And that's where we'll end the episode today. I'm just kidding, bro. No, I can get into some country. We'll save that for another in the queue. We'll talk about that later in the summer. Maybe once it's warmer out, then I can get down with that conversation. But for now, we're going to have to cut it. But no, thank you all for listening. That's what's in the queue for us, but that's also an overview on fonts, so hopefully it was helpful. If there are more memeable fonts that I did not mention today, please shoot them my way. And maybe I'll try to throw them into a design for a client. We'll see. Maybe we could have fun with this. If my clients are listening, I'm not going to do that. Absolutely not. Would never put a memeable font that you'd be made fun of in your design. You would never do that, Julian, right?
Absolutely not.
No. So anyways, thank you for listening. I'm sure you'll be listening to us soon with another episode. But for now, that's all. So thanks for listening and have a great week.
See ya.
Yeah. Yeah.